He was so inept. I helped him true forbidden love stories. Oh, Aldiant always seemed so kind, but it wasn't just the light-hearted lessons, there were more challenging days as well. When Derek's anger or sadness surfaced in ways I found difficult to navigate, similar to when his baseball coach sidelined him for a whole season due to missing just a few practices. He stepped in to assist me with household tasks. Derek burst into the kitchen, throwing his bag onto the floor, his expression clouded with frustration. "It's not fair," he shouted. "I try so hard. And it's never enough." I allowed him to unleash his fury for a brief moment, my own heart aching for him before I finally found the words to say. "Life isn't always fair, Derek," I said gently. "But you mustn't allow it to turn you bitter. One can only manage their reactions, and at times, that alone is sufficient to change the course of events." He remained silent, merely nodding, the struggle within him fading as he settled into a chair. That night, I observed him composing an email to his coach, expressing his apologies and providing an explanation. The following morning, the coach reached out to inform him that he was welcome to return to the team. Derek's face brightened with a smile, so broad it almost shattered my heart in two. As I observed him standing proudly in our modest kitchen, his hands skillfully crafting a sandwich, a skill I, of course, imparted to him. I can't shake the feeling of pride that wells up inside me. "You know," I say, leaning against the counter, "you've really made some impressive strides, kiddo." He turns to me with that crooked smile, the one that still carries a hint of boyish charm despite his broad shoulders and steady confidence. "It's due to having the finest mentor," he responds. I end that moment. I understood that although I had imparted to Derek the skills of life, how to tie his shoes, charm a girl, or stand up for his beliefs, he, in turn, had imparted lessons to me as well. He has imparted lessons of resilience and patience, showing that even when life strays from our expectations, it can still possess a unique beauty in its chaotic and unpredictable nature. We've journeyed this far together, Derek and I, and while I understand he's on the brink of carving out his own destiny, stepping into a future where I may not always be present, I also recognize that the connection we've nurtured will keep us anchored, regardless of where life leads us. Derek had been pacing the living room for the past 20 minutes. His sneakers squeaking against the hardwood floor. Occasionally, he would steal a look at his phone, only to quickly tuck it away again, grumbling softly to himself. I observed him from the kitchen, stifling a laugh as he ran a hand through his hair for the 5th time, causing it to stick up in every direction. "Derek," I finally made the call, placing my mug of tea down gently. "If you continue like this, you'll create a path in the floor." He ceased his restless pacing and faced me, his expression a blend of frustration and embarrassment. "Mom, I seek your guidance." This was not unfamiliar. Derek had sought my counsel for as long as he could remember, but the way he spoke now, his voice softer and tinged with hesitation, made it clear that this conversation transcended the usual topics of school, sports, or repairs. This felt unique. "All right," I said, pulling out a chair at the kitchen table and motioning for him to take a seat. "What's happening? Your thoughts?" He paused for a moment before sinking into the chair opposite me, leaning forward. His elbows rested on his knees as he toyed with the strap of his watch. "Nancy is the focus of this narrative." Nancy, she had visited a few times, a lovely girl with gentle brown curls, and a laugh that appeared to illuminate Derek's entire face. I observed the way he gazed at her, as if she were the sole occupant of the space. And I caught her sneaking looks at him when she believed no one was paying attention. There was young love. "There's truly nothing comparable." "What about Nancy?" I inquired softly, even though I sensed I was already aware. He let out a deep breath, massaging the nape of his neck. "Things are becoming, well, I'm not quite sure, more serious." His voice lifted just a bit at the end, as though he wasn't completely confident in the words he was saying. I tilted my head, anticipating his next words. "We've only kissed so far," he said swiftly, his cheeks turning a deep shade of red. "However, I believe she is looking to advance things, you know." There it was. "All right," I replied cautiously, maintaining a blank expression. "What are your thoughts on that?" "I don't know," he confessed, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. I truly have a fondness for her, many, however, I'm concerned about making mistakes, and honestly, I'm feeling a bit lost in this situation. He concealed his face within his hands. This is incredibly awkward. It's not something to be ashamed of, Derek, I said, extending my hand across the table to give his arm a reassuring pat. It's perfectly fine. Everyone experiences anxiety during their initial attempt. He glanced at me through his fingers. You're not suggesting I should ask Dad about this, are you? The edge of my lips curled slightly. Would you like me to? He shook his head with great intensity. No offense, but my dad would likely just suggest I pick up a book or something similar. I laughed softly, even as the reality of his words pricked at me slightly. Lewis had always excelled at. He preferred abstract ideas over emotional conversations. Approaching intimacy with a sense of clinical detachment. If Derek required direction, it would have to originate from me. Well, I remarked, selecting my words with precision. If you truly wish to know. I will share it with you, however, solely on the condition that you're confident that you're prepared to listen. He nodded, his expression sincere. I wish to understand, Mother. I want to ensure everything goes smoothly with her. She is truly one of a kind. The manner in which he expressed it, with such conviction, it stirred a slight ache in my heart. He had outgrown the days when he relied on me to tie his shoes, or to read him bedtime stories. He was a young man, attempting to find his way through the intricacies of love. And I experienced a mix of pride and bittersweet reflection on the journey we had taken together. Very well, I remarked, placing my hands neatly on the table. First of all, ensuring that you are both aligned is crucial. Speak with her, Derek, ensure she feels prepared, and that you're not hurrying into anything merely because you believe it's what she desires. He nodded, taking in every word. Furthermore, I emphasize that communication is essential. If you have any doubts, if you have any questions, just ask her. If something seems amiss, bring it up. Intimacy transcends the physical realm. It revolves around trust and the mutual understanding between individuals. His brow knitted in concentration. But what if I express something incorrectly? Or take the misguided path? You'll encounter errors along the way, I remarked softly, and that's perfectly fine. No one achieves perfection on the first attempt. Or the second or the third. What's important is that you show respect, and that you're truly listening to her. If you feel anxious, share that with her. She will value your candor. He let out a breath, his shoulders easing into a state of calm. Somewhat. And Derek, I have adopted a more serious tone now. Ensure that you prioritize your safety. Do you require my assistance? I have already purchased some. He cut in, his face flushing once more. Just in case, you know. I smiled, grateful that he had the foresight to plan ahead. Excellent, that holds significant value. We lingered in quietude for a brief moment, the heaviness of the dialogue lingering between us. Then Derek looked up at me, his eyes brimming with appreciation. Thank you, Mom. Well, you see, it's important to keep things from getting strange. I chuckled, leaning in to tousle his hair playfully. My role is to ensure that you are ready for the significant challenges ahead. Even if it feels somewhat uncomfortable. That evening, as Derek departed for his date with Nancy, I remained at the. From my vantage point by the window, I observed him jogging towards his car. He glanced back briefly, offering me a swift wave. And I waved back, my heart brimming with a peculiar blend of feelings. I had imparted all my knowledge to him. In what way? To cherish, how to honor, how to traverse the world with compassion and bravery. As he drove away to meet Nancy, it struck me that there was one lesson I couldn't impart to him: how to release my own little boy. I recommended the restaurant, both to soothe his nerves and to calm my own. Derek felt incredibly anxious following his date with Nancy. It was difficult to determine if he was simply overanalyzing the situation, or if the kiss had awakened something unfamiliar and uncharted within him. Seeing him like this awakened feelings within me, ones I kept hidden beneath layers of routine and obligation. How about we head out for dinner tonight? I spoke nonchalantly, wishing my tone wouldn't reveal the subtle pulse of anxiety within me. A pleasant thought. Perhaps we could enjoy a stroll afterward. Breathing in the fresh air could assist in clearing your thoughts. He paused, evidently taken aback. Is that so? Would you like to? Absolutely. I responded with a smile that I hoped came across as effortless and genuine. It will benefit us both. That's how we found ourselves at the quaint Italian restaurant in the heart of downtown. A cozy, inviting space bathed in gentle light, filled with the soft murmur of conversations surrounding us. Derek appeared to be at ease in this setting. His shoulders were no longer hunched, and the slight crease between his brows began to smooth out. While we waited for our food, I leaned forward, resting my chin on my hand. You've been silent since your outing. Did it meet all your expectations? He paused, running a hand through his hair in that familiar nervous habit of his. It was acceptable. Nancy is truly wonderful, you know. However, he let his words fade, his gaze fixed on the glass of water he held. However, I encouraged softly. She kissed me, he murmured, his voice barely rising above a whisper. And I felt as though I was missing the mark or something. I felt as though I wasn't truly there. Derek. I extended my hand across the table, brushing against his with a gentle touch. You're getting caught up in your thoughts. Affection doesn't come with instructions. They are merely fleeting instances. You don't need to analyze them in detail, simply embrace them. He gazed at me then, his eyes probing mine for answers I wasn't certain I could provide. I asked that the way it functions, you simply experience. I smiled gently, allowing my hand to rest for a brief moment before withdrawing. Absolutely. It's perfectly normal to experience nerves, as well. It's a part of being human. After that, our conversation took a turn, drifting towards lighter subjects, his classes, and his summer plans, yet, I couldn't help but observe how much more relaxed he grew. It felt as if addressing me as Leah, rather than Mom, had woven a fresh thread of comfort into our connection. After dinner, we strolled by the waterfront, the moon illuminating the water with a silvery sheen as it danced across the surface. Ripples. The cool night air wafted the subtle scent of salt and seaweed, blending seamlessly with the enduring fragrance of garlic and basil from the nearby restaurant. Derek appeared more buoyant now, his steps more assured. You're really easy to talk to, he said suddenly, shattering the comfortable quiet between them. Excellent. I want you to experience that feeling, I responded with a smile, even as my heart raced at his words. Upon arriving home, I raised my arms high above my head, feigning ignorance to the way Derek's gaze danced over me as I shifted. I've been on my feet all day, I remarked with a playful sigh. Do you think you could share one of your renowned massages with me? His brows arched in astonishment. Renowned? I had no idea they were well known. They will be, I teased, sinking onto the couch. Come on, please don't make me plead. He chuckled gently, then shifted to take a seat behind me, his hands lingering hesitantly above my shoulders before finally resting comfortably in position. His touch was cautious at first, his fingers brushed gently against my muscles, as if he were hesitant to cause me any pain. Derek, you're not going to break me, I said with a playful tone. A bit more pressure, please, he complied, his grip tightening just a touch as he kneaded his thumbs into the knots in my shoulders. I released a soft sigh, allowing my eyes to gently close. His touch held a grounding quality, a tenderness that resonated differently now that he had transitioned from boyhood to manhood, navigating his path in the world. You're quite skilled at this, I whispered. Thank you, he murmured gently. I simply want to ensure that I'm approaching this correctly. I assured him, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment the room felt achingly silent, broken only by the delicate rustle of his movements and the gentle rhythm of our breaths. I reassured myself that this was simply a mother seeking assistance from her son. A fleeting moment of solace after a tiring day, but as his hands moved lower, tracing the line of my spine, I couldn't dismiss the warmth spreading through me, the kind that felt out of place. Derek, I said, sitting up slightly and turning to face him. His hands fell away, and his gaze flickered with uncertainty, perhaps sensing the shift within me. You've been shouldering an immense amount of stress, I remarked swiftly, concealing my thoughts behind a playful chuckle. You should take some time for yourself too, he said quietly, his eyes locking onto mine for just a beat too long before he looked away. That night, as I lay in bed, an unsettling feeling lingered within me, a sense that something had changed between us. Something I wasn't prepared to define. It began quietly, like a shift in the atmosphere that you can't exactly identify, yet sense nonetheless. Derek lingered more often. Whether I was in the kitchen flipping through cookbooks or curled up on the couch reading, he always seemed to be near, finding small ways to fill the spaces between us. Initially, I reassured myself that it was a normal reaction. He had been through a difficult period with Nancy, and I was his refuge. The one he could trust to share his thoughts without the worry of being judged. I had always been there for him, hadn't I? Yet, the comfort we shared transformed into something different. A subtlety that felt more intense. One afternoon, I was tending to the garden in the backyard when I caught sight of him on the porch, observing my every move. His gaze held a steady intensity. Thoughtful and deliberate, as if he were attempting to etch the moment into his memory. "What do you see?" I inquired with a light-hearted tone, wiping the soil from my palms. "You," he said simply. A small smile dancing at his lips, his answer's honesty took me by surprise. I chuckled gently, dismissing him with a wave. "Please assist me with these, then it won't plant itself." He knelt beside me in the earth, sharing the moment. We collaborated closely, our hands occasionally grazing as we meticulously arranged the flowers in tidy rows. Every touch delivered a delicate surge within me. A reminder of how attuned I had become to him, not merely as my son, but as an individual poised on the brink of adulthood. Maneuvering through the intricate currents of identity and connection. "You're quite skilled at this," I remarked, shattering the quiet, as he gently worked the earth around a marigold. "I may need to enlist you as my gardening companion." "Anytime," he replied, his voice gentle yet inviting. "I enjoy our time together." Our eyes locked for a fleeting moment as I stole a glance at him. His gaze held a weight, an unvoiced intensity that resonated with significance. I swiftly diverted my gaze, concentrating on the blossom before me. The days went by, and Derek's presence turned into a steady fixture. We prepared meals side by side, strolled by the waterfront, and enjoyed classic films well into the night. He was observant in a manner that surprised me, picking up on the tiniest nuances about me, such as how I hummed when lost in contemplation, or my preference for tea with just a hint of honey. "You make things easy," he remarked one evening as we lounged on the porch, the sun dipping low in a cascade of golden pink hues. "Simple." I responded with a smile. "Absolutely, with you. It feels effortless. I can simply be who I am." His words struck me with an intensity one wasn't ready for. I took a deep breath, maintaining a cheerful tone. "That's what family is all about, Derek." He nodded silently, his gaze fixed on the horizon, an expression of distance clouding his features. The quietness enveloped us, a soothing presence tinged with an unnameable weight. One evening, after a particularly long day, I reclined on the couch, allowing the stillness of the house to envelop me. Derek stood in the doorway, his hair a bit tousled, with a subtle hint of soap lingering around him. "Hey," he said, his voice gentle. "Do you mind if I join you?" "Certainly not," I replied, gesturing to the spot next to me. He took a seat, and I instantly noticed his proximity, much closer than his usual distance. I could sense his warmth, the steady cadence of his breathing. For a moment, we lingered in quietude, the sole sound being the soft murmur of the television. "Leah," he murmured unexpectedly, his voice just a breath above silence. I turned to look at him, my heart inexplicably racing at the way he pronounced my name. "What is it?" He paused, his eyes falling to his hands. "I'm unsure how to express this without it resonating strange. Simply express it," I urged softly. He gazed up at me then, his eyes probing into mine. "I believe I have developed some feelings for you, genuine emotions. Not the type I'm meant to possess." The words lingered in the atmosphere, a heaviness that settled between us. My breath caught, and for a fleeting moment, I found myself at a loss for words. "Derek," I started to feel my voice shake. "It seems you are experiencing some confusion. It's natural to feel a deep connection with someone who has consistently supported you. However, it's not bewilderment." He cut in, his tone resolute. "I understand my emotions. I've attempted to overlook it, yet it persists in my thoughts. Being with you feels unique. It's simple, it's correct. My heart raced within me. The boundaries I had meticulously established between us unexpectedly faded away. This isn't possible, I stammered. Yet, even as the words escaped my lips, I found myself unable to take a step back. I understand that it's not appropriate, he remarked. His voice trembling. However, I needed to share this with you. I could no longer maintain the facade, for an extended period. We simply gazed at one another, the space in between. We are burdened with feelings that are far too intricate to articulate. Then, as if compelled by an unseen energy, he leaned in. His lips grazing mine in a kiss so gentle, so hesitant, that it left me gasping for air. I withdrew, my thoughts swirling rapidly. Derek, we are unable to proceed. This cannot occur. Apologies escaped his lips in a hurried whisper, his expression a blend of remorse and yearning. I didn't intend to. I rested my hand on his arm, bringing him to silence. This is intricate. We must exercise caution. However, I wish to preserve what we share. He nodded, his eyes probing into mine. I don't either. That night, I lay awake in bed. The memory of his kiss swirling in my thoughts. It was a moment that transformed everything. And though I reassured myself that it was impossible for it to occur once more, I found it impossible to dismiss the subtle excitement it had awakened within me. Derek's emotions were laid bare now. And the boundary we had crossed would be unfeasible to untangle. Whatever lay ahead, I was certain of one thing. Our connection had changed forever, and there was no turning back. Farewell.